a trial, vaccine trial for 6 years when you were a child, right?
Yeah,
Can we talk about that? What happened?
absolutely. Um, when I was young, let's say between maybe ages 4 and 6, I had a chronic 104 fever, and they could not get it under control. So, I was in preschool and then kindergarten, 1st grade, and during those years, I would be out of school for 4 days with 104 fever. We would break it by Thursday. I would go back to school on Friday. On Monday, I would have 101 fever. I would only be out for 1 day. I'd go back Tuesday through Friday, and that pattern just kinda continued.
Just unexplained fever.
Unexplained, yeah, and so the family doctor, we were in a small town at the time, and the family doctor finally said to my mother, "I cannot continue to put your child on antibiotics at this rate. I would like for you to go to the city," and at that time, it was Louisville that was the closest one, "and see this particular pediatrician who was also an epidemiologist." So he had 1 foot in his practice and 1 foot in research, "and I really need you to go see him." And the day we arrived, he examined me and looked at my mom and said, "We gotta get her to the hospital or she's not gonna make it." And my mother had no idea that it was so life-threatening.
No way.
And so I was in the hospital for a week and they pumped iron into my system. I was so severely anemic. So I think that, that was in the 70s. And so I think that um, I probably was on the precipice of being diagnosed with leukemia. But he knew of an experimental vaccine and he asked my mother for permission to try it. And so we would drive the hour to Louisville every Saturday for 2 years to get a shot. After 2 years, I graduated to every other week for 2 more years. And then the last 2 years, years 5 and 6, it was every 3 weeks. And then I graduated out of the program. And since then, I did research on it as an adult. They took it off the market, too many side effects for others, but it saved my life and it rebuilt my entire immune system. Yeah.
Oh,
Now I missed out on, almost 6 years of, cartoons on Saturday morning with my brother, but it was significant.
did you also experience a lot of health issues when you were in your adulthood?
Yes. So, I was not I was not very wise in taking care of myself at all. I was a workaholic. I did not eat healthy. I ate on the run. So lots of fast food, lots of low quality food. I didn't really work out and I loved beer and cigarettes. I loved a cold beer and cigarettes. And I did. I mean, it was just part of my community culture, where I grew up and it stuck. And then I was working I clocked 1 week where I had done 3 or 4 events. I clocked like 100, can't remember how many, 100 and some hours in a work week. And so 40 hours was like on vacation. And so my body in my late 20s said, "You're no longer in charge, lady. I'm taking over." And so my body just went down. And at the time, they didn't know what was wrong with me. And I asked about chronic fatigue syndrome. And my doctor told me that was basically said in so many words that was more of a mental health issue, that was kind of a figment of your imagination. And I said, "Thank you, but no thank you. I'm gonna keep looking until I get an answer because this is not my imagination." And,
Did they want to put you on drugs
uh
or medication for the rest of your life?
yes. So when I did finally get a good diagnosis, then the answer was, "We don't have a cure for it, but we can manage it with pharmaceuticals for the rest of your life, and you can get your quality of life back." And the interesting thing about it was a year prior to that diagnosis, I my one of my last conversations in person with my grandmother before she passed, It was just she and I. We were sitting at a kitchen table and her kitchen table, and she had 12 pill bottles. And I said, Grandma, how many of those treat your cancer? And how many of those treat side effects? And she put on her glasses and giggled. I can still hear her cute little giggle. And she said, Well, honey, I don't know. Let's look. And so she looked at every pill bottle and she started laughing. She goes, Well, it looks like only two of them are for the cancer, and the other 10 are for the side effects of those two. So when my doctor said, we can do this with pharmaceuticals, I was in my late 20s. I looked at her and I said, okay, but by the time I'm 60, how many pharmaceuticals will I be taking to treat the side effects? And how high will my dosage be as I get older and I need more to keep going? She said, you don't want the answer to either of those questions because it's not going to be good. If I've got to be on pharmaceuticals in my 20s, it's 40 years later, it's not going to look great, 30 or 40 years later. And so I said, well, I'm going to find a way,
Right.
but you can put me on the drugs today because I have to get out of bed and get on with my life. That is what created the methodology that I has caused my business to be word of mouth.
The JMac method.
Yeah, it was what I've learned in my own reflection and my own understanding of the mind body connection that when people called me and asked me to coach them, I said, I can't just tell you what to do. I need to come up with a way to guide you. And so I reflected on everything I did. I weaned myself off of those pharmaceuticals after 18 months. And by the time 18 months were up, I was already on drug number 2, starting on drug number 3. And that was just 18 months later. So imagine 30 years later. And so I weaned myself off, never to return to them again. Yes.
So proud of you.
Thank you.
Good
And then
for
but
you.
how many years later was it I got diagnosed with breast cancer and had to go all over again. But
Oh my God. All these manifestations that happen in our body happens for a reason, to tell us something of it, to bring our attention to ourselves.
absolutely.
And each part of our body has something specific to say.
Yes.
So there's a book, obviously, I'm sure you know about that, Love Your Disease. Or there are plenty of books that talk about how neglecting one's energy system and one's emotion and one's well-being can manifest itself in all kinds of different forms of disease. And using the medication and drugs obviously will just eliminate maybe the side effects or the outer manifestation, but the inner manifestation and inner root is still inside us. So we have
Yes.
to pluck that root,
That's right.
which is the inner work, right?
Yes. And so that is 100% true. And that understanding of that is the mind body connection. Actually, if we want to be cliche, but it's true, the mind body spirit connection. Because in my work, and I will even say this to executives, your spirit is the only part of you that has the power to rise up and talk your brain into submission. So you need to get really acquainted with your spirit. And because it's the gentle part of you. So its voice is so quiet, you're going to skip over it all the time with the voices of your ego, which are very loud. There are multiple voices, and they're always going to win until you recognize that that's what you're looking for inside of yourself. And your body is going to be the first thing to show you who's actually in charge. And so when we don't have our health, it's really hard to have our happiness. We can do it. We can absolutely do it. But why make it so hard on ourselves? And so the gateway to freedom is that understanding and recognizing that it's what we call trapped energy. When you do not process your emotions, or when you do relinquish your own well being for to stay in the good graces of others, that's giving your power away, you can bet there's going to be trapped energy in your body. And when that happens, it will manifest into a physical disease, condition, illness, and it will get your attention. Now, a lot of people can ignore those when those happen until something's very seriously goes down. Yeah.
How to get rid of the trapped energy without causing others harm or discomfort or annoyance
Yeah.
or any other negative
Well,
result.
yeah, two of the things that people resist the most are some of the most important things we can do, and that is to feel anger and grief. And we resist it like nobody's business, and we will put on the polite face. We will bury it. We'll react to somebody because we're not dealing with our own emotions. And just because it's important to feel them doesn't mean that you have to take it out on another person, doesn't mean you have to act out on it. That's when something really important goes wrong. That's when something that's good for you goes badly. And so we want to give ourselves private, quiet time to process our emotions. You know what I used to do when I was going through so much hardship at once? I would get in the confines of my car and I would scream at the top of my lungs. And let me tell you, I can have a very foul mouth. I I have Irish Italian blood running through my system, even though I'm fully American, and I can be extremely feisty. So what I will do is put myself in the confines of my car and I will let the ugliness just completely come out of me like a tidal wave. And is that's a preventative measure from trapped energy. It frees us. You will feel so much better when it's out of your system and no harm was done to anyone. But if you keep it stuffed inside of you, it is absolutely doing you harm. The other thing is grief, tears. I often feel badly for men if they can't cry. If they've got conditioned to believe that that's a weakness, that's a really sad thing. Because
Crying was designed
to claim,
crying was designed to release.
yes. I mean,
Naturally.
if you think about the more mystical side of things, right? And how, in metaphysical terms, we say the eyes are the gateway to the soul. Okay, well, then let your soul cleanse, honey. Like, let it go and let it out of your system. It is so important.
It is very important. I wanted to ask you something very interesting. You change your body. You change your after all this hard work, all this hours of just pushing through. Were you trying to impress somebody? Who were you trying to impress by doing all this work? Like all the work
Gosh,
that you did.
no. I would say it's the opposite. I was Oh my gosh, no. I feel like it was the opposite. I feel like I was going against the grain of what everyone wanted me to do. Go get the job, go be responsible, go do the thing that you need to do to take care of your family. So, no, there was no impressing anyone in any part of my journey ever.
Okay. Okay.
It was the opposite for me. It was terrifying, losing, the good graces of others and that I loved.
I was referring to when you were in your 20s and you said you were working like almost 100 something
Oh, when I
hours.
was working those hours?
Yes.
No, I was intrinsically motivated. I loved what I was doing. I had been raised in the Midwest where the work ethic is deeply ingrained as part of your worth. And so workaholism can easily become an addiction because you feel a sense of worth when you're working hard. And so when I loved to work hard already, I was deeply conditioned to do it and I loved what I was doing. So it was a very potent combination.
That makes sense.
I became completely addicted to my work.
And then you let yourself go, basically, your health.
Yeah, but I didn't know it. I was in my 20s.
Huge,
I was like, "Oh, work hard, play hard." That was the mentality. I didn't think anything of it.
right?
Yeah.
And then that was the birth of JMac Method. You changed your life, you changed your body. What was the first thing that you had to let go of, which was so hard for you to?
The steadiness of a paycheck.
Ah,
That's a luxury in my was a luxury in my world. I mean, you if you're gonna go out on your own, unless you unless you intentionally scale your business and you go and you get investors or you have stockpiled the money and you are standing it up immediately with formalities and payroll and all those things, that does happen when you're starting a business. But as I said, I didn't intentionally start a business. And so that wasn't part of my world anymore.
what does true power really mean to you? True power.
True power means to me, it is the understanding that we possess within us the power to experience all of what we want in our lifetimes if we understand how. And it first starts with self acceptance.
Can
There's
we talk about this
Sure. Where
self-acceptance?
most people come into that inner conflict is when the most intrinsic part of themselves, the most natural part of themselves, runs up against the approval of their loved ones.
Oof. We need to actually meditate on this phrase because there is so much as at stake, right? In our minds about that.
Yes. Well, we fear that we won't be loved. Well, how can we be loved if we don't love ourselves enough to be who we are? So I don't know what we're fearing, but we do it.
How do you break that loop and come out of that vicious cycle?
Well, for everyone, I think it's different because it really is about understanding it first. Clarity reigns king, period. And we underestimate the power of clarity. And it takes time to understand the depths of our self sabotaging patterns within us. It takes time to understand the contradictory beliefs that are wired inside of us. It takes time to understand what our true values are. So, being patient with your own process of understanding is really important, but it begins with setting an intention to do so. You really must understand, not you, I'm saying proverbially you, right? Um, that so much of our power is in our intention. Everything we do is based in an intention. When we wake up in the morning, we intend to get up. We may intend to go brush our teeth or take a shower or eat breakfast. You know, are we consciously setting an intention around that? No, we just go in emotion. We just go do it. But it is beginning with an intention. And so my call to everyone is pay very close attention to your intentions because those will be rooted in those beliefs and they will just be your autopilot. And next thing you know, you're way down the road of your life and you're not going where you want to go. And so if you don't consciously set your intentions, you're not going to go in the direction you want, or you're leaving it to happenstance, which, okay, maybe you had a lot of luck. But luck is usually derived from that alignment we talked about in the beginning and that intention setting. And if you don't know where to start with your intention, because what I find with a lot of my clients, they don't know what they want. but they do know what they don't want.
Okay, that's good.
And so if they come to me and I say, "Well, okay, why are you here? What is it you're trying to accomplish?" They say, "I don't know, but I cannot live like this anymore." Right? "I don't know, but I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't know, but I can't take this relationship anymore." Whatever it is, there's always clarity around what we don't want. So if we don't know what intention we want to set, just set one to say, I intend to start my own inner journey of exploration. Show me what I don't know or what's causing me harm. And you can bet once your antenna are up, you will start to increase your self-awareness and you will start to really explore those parts of you that are absolutely getting in your own way.
The universe will only respond to intention, regardless of what that is. So we are basically reaping the results of our intention that we are putting out.
Yes. And remember the physics of it is it's quite simply everything that's happening is a reflection of you. It's not happening to you,
For sure.
right?
Yes.
We're so wired to believe that we're victims of everything. We are victims of circumstance. We are victims of other people's bad behaviors. We are victims of disease. We are victims of all these things. And, part of true power is understanding that you have so much power within you with your intentions and with your mind. But if you don't have control over your mind and you're just letting yourself believe that, you're just flowing with the whatever the world's taking you, well, that's really at the root of your problem because you have the power to set an intention to gain more clarity so that you can decide what you want and you can make stronger decisions and you can gain confidence over time with every decision you make, even if you deem it as a bad decision. Well, you learned more, didn't you? Yes. So we tend to also succumb to the idea of perfection. That's a huge saboteur.
Again, perfection to please somebody or some idea or something.
Right.
Because what's wrong with not being perfect? That we're not going to be validated, we're not going to be loved or accepted or all the other things.
Right.
Self
But if
acceptance.
you love yourself, you will be. Things magically turn to your favor because, again, those reactions to you are a reflection. They're a reflection of where you are with your comfort and acceptance of yourself.